We see in the second half of the 19th century, in the later Victorian and Edwardian period, the growth of a whole array, one might even say army, of propagandist leagues and societies and fringe and ginger groups who either are promoting particular imperial agendas, emigration to the empire, imperial naval supremacy, tariff reform, whatever it may be, or they're to promote the empire as a concept and the virtues and values of empire more broadly.
It took all sorts of forms. So speaking tours, lecture tours by prominent colonial politicians or by advocates of imperialism, design of school textbooks, creation of Empire Day, the design and propagation of all sorts of memorabilia, paraphernalia to do with the empire, just a general set of strategies for encouraging a sense of belonging within an empire as opposed to a much more local or national frame of reference.
It was then that those maps of the world with the British possessions coloured in red came into English schoolrooms. They never had been before then. The empire was never colour-coded before about 1880, and it doesn't come into schoolrooms until the 1900s, put there by propaganda organisations like the Navy League and so on, in order to encourage this kind of imperial patriotism.
By the end of the 19th century, the empire was much more likely to be part of the fabric of the average Briton's daily life than it had been in 1850. Whether in terms of one's economic well-being, the food one ate or the clothes one wore and where they came from, or where people in the armed forces had been sent, where one's friends and family lived, where letters were going to and from. Whether looking at elite levels or more popular culture, there's a huge range of cultural artefacts, either about the empire or with an explicitly pro-imperial message. But it's been pointed out by more sceptical observers, at the time and since, that this was almost never the dominant theme in any genre of advertising, music, literature, children's comics, or even early cinema. But does this greater imperial cultural presence point to a deeper commitment to and belief in empire amongst the population at large? Had the British become an imperial people?
What we know about imperial propaganda, notwithstanding the fact that it's been very well and very widely studied over the last 20 years, is how much of it there was, how varied the forms that it took, how energetic and active people were in peddling and promoting it. What is still much harder for us to establish is precisely what effects that it actually had.
We know, and it's relatively easy to know, a lot about the production of such images, of what was put out, whether it's in children's comics or in popular novels or in the music hall or on biscuit tin lids. We know far less, and we can, in the very nature of things, know far less about how it was received, how it was consumed. People bought the biscuit tins, they ate the biscuits. The people who are designing the biscuit tin lids might want to propagandise for empire. But how can we know who and how the pictures of redcoats or faithful Indian servants on those tin lids were looked at? Did they influence anyone politically? Extraordinarily hard to say.
The efforts of imperialists to educate and inform testified not to their confidence in the imperialism of the masses, but to their fears of indifference or even downright hostility. One must unfortunately explain to these damn fools, wrote a despairing Milner of his audiences in 1906, why we want an empire. if the records of policy making are any guide. Mass enthusiasm for empire building, whether spontaneous or manufactured, was fleeting at best.
People get excited about the empire in moments of crisis, whilst in routine times there is comparatively little media coverage, comparatively little artistic and other cultural production that's obviously and directly empire related, apparently comparatively little popular interest. There's really not one British general election across the whole of modern history that's fought, won and lost mainly on imperial questions. And when opinion surveys started to come into play, which is only well into the 20th century, of course we find that most people most of the time are quite staggeringly ignorant about the empire. Doesn't mean they don't care, especially when there's a crisis, but it's a fairly loose, broad, vague kind of caring, often a sort of extension of a more generalised patriotism, and quite hard, often, analytically or politically, really clearly to distinguish what's distinctively imperial from what's a more generalised patriotism or nationalism, or even what one critic about 100 years ago famously called jingoism, a particularly aggressive and perhaps mindless kind of patriotism.
Consent is crucial. Consent is different, I think, from somebody necessarily being very knowledgeable about the empire. It might even be different from someone feeling, in the normal run of things, very committed to it. It's certainly different from someone feeling necessarily that they're emotionally attached to empire. What it means is there is enough level of support there, enough acquiescence, if you like, because that's all you need. Anything more is better, is a bonus, for a body of opinion not to develop that is overtly critical of or antagonistic to empire.